have been so impressed, and I'm so admirative of these two people, their work, seriously, because they do more. They do all, right? They do all. And what? Is it pigeon? No, it's not pigeon. But so they do all. So, I mean, I would describe them as artists, storytellers, feminists, activists, business people, kind of also professionals. And so let me just briefly say what I know they do, and then they can expand. So when we talked about the middle class and grassroots activism, I believe they represent what it means for, let's say, the so-called, and I don't really believe in this thing called middle class, let's say the so-called professional class who speaks to and reaches out and works within communities, right? So whether it's through a project like a Drama Queens, or it's through a project like Katampered Press, or it is through bringing people together to educate through art. I mean, so I've been inspired not just by the spoken word pieces that the Poetra constantly creates, but her activism in amongst collectives and communities, and how she manages to do it all. Her book that recently came out, A Woman Eats Me Whole, is fantastic. It's brilliant. You should get a copy. I have one at home. And it's a small piece of feminist activism that speaks to the question of what does it mean to be a woman, to be African, and that question never gets asked enough, because we speak about market women, the role in the politics, how they helped, pay for Nkrumah's campaigns, but we don't know enough about them. We don't know much more about the women in politics because there aren't enough women visibly in politics. So she's trying to change that. She's trying to work on that. And Akosua Hanson, I believe, is doing an African futurism, that is questioning and asking people to question questions around gender, sexuality, futures in the African continent through Moongirls. And it's also a very powerful way of speaking and educating. So listen, I can go on, but I will let them introduce themselves, what they are doing right now, who they are, and I'll let you take the mic, which is over here. Can you just, a round of applause to bring them to
Thank you. All right, hi everyone, good afternoon. Thank you for being here. So my name is Akosua Hanson, and I'm an artistic activist, a feminist, and lately I think the simplest way to say it is I'm in the work of liberation. So that kind of like underscores everything I've done. I started an organization called Drama Queens, which is a young artistic activist organization that usually use arts for activism, specifically with theater. So I went to Legon, I went to the School of Performing Arts, and acting in Hollywood with Denzel was actually my dream. That didn't happen, unfortunately. It's gonna happen. I know that. So yeah, but as I was waiting for Denzel to send me a script, we started Drama Queens, using theater for activism. Our first plays were heavily around rape culture. I think my first foray into activism was through rape culture. And so, yeah, so the plays were kind of like the end product of some of the activism I had started to do, talking about rape in media and things like that. But actually, my very first job, my career, I'm a media person in Ghana. I work in radio. I started my media with home-based TV, actually. So I started with TV. Home-based TV used to be located on GBC grounds. And then I started working at City FM as an editor for their newspaper called The Weekend Globe at the time, which is a culture, lifestyle weekend paper. And that's when I first met Sister Debbie. So Sister Debbie was actually my first celebrity back then. Yeah. She was so cool, so cool to me. Afterwards, I became a producer for one of the longest, best voices on radio, Jessica Paris Saforo. You all know her, right? Yes. And I got to be a producer, so it was just such a blessing for my career. So from then on, I mean, radio has been my path. I'm currently a radio presenter at YFM. But if you see, YFM is pop culture, urban lifestyle, hip hop, all of that. I'm also a very heavy Pan-Africanist, activist. And I used to try to push all my activism there. And used to think, all the stuff they're doing is so shallow, it's not deep. It's like, you guys don't listen to conscious stuff, and this was me when I started, right? And Prof. A.C. Sutherland was the one who told me that there are various avenues for liberation, basically. And even with just the music, it's fine. You don't need to push that there. You have drama queens, do that there. So I kind of like started to dichotomize things. So drama queens also started at the same time. I was really at YFM at the time. So I was doing that activist work while I was at YFM. What again? Yes, so Drama Queens ended for me in, I think, 2020. It's an under 30 organization, so I officially became very young for the organization. And I just continued doing work with Moongirls. So Moongirls is a graphic novel series that became my final artistic activist project within Drama Queens that I took further when I left. It's a graphic novel series following 4 superheroes, just trying to tackle the stories of Africa, corruption, rape culture. Rape culture is always a constant in all my work, I have to say. History, African women's histories, their histories. And it's exciting stuff, it's futurist, is pastist, if there's a word like that. It's everything. So in a brief, I guess this is what I do. Thank you.
So you're too young for drama queens. You're too young for drama queens. Hi. My name is Ama Asantewa Diaka. I'm also known as Poetra Santoa. I'm a writer and a poet and a community catalyst. I think those 3, I like to call myself a storyteller and a community catalyst because I think being a storyteller encompasses everything that I do. I have been a performance poet in Ghana officially for 12 years. Yeah, I feel very old when I say that. But I've been performing actively in Ghana, Accra at least, for the past 12 years. I'm also the founder of an organization called Black Girls Glow, which started as a community effort, a community group to create space for women artists to collaborate, come together, have conversations about their art and their, I guess, individual issues and the impact of their art in their individual community. Just like writing, it's a tool to communicate. And so we want to give a space or an opportunity for people who would never step into the studio to also create that and see how the material could be used, even if it's just for them in that very moment. So we started Market Studio this year. It's been very fun and interesting. And then we have a project called For the Culture, which, again, as an artist, I don't particularly believe that we have an art industry. I don't think there's a clear path for visual artists, writers, musicians, etc. in Ghana. I mean, if Ghana is your only plan A and plan B. And so just thinking about somehow people are making it work. They have their own time frames. But we are so distant from each other. What if we started having these conversations to try and bridge the gap about what is happening here in this supposed industry and what is happening here in this supposed community? So FTC, or For the Culture, is also something that we started. And all of this works under Black Girls Glow. I'm also the founder of a journal called Trumpet Press, which really started as a way to showcase Ghanaian work. I always say that I'm not the first person, and everybody knows this, to have started Trumpet, but it's so hard. I haven't done it for 4 years. It's so hard to run a journal. And so it makes sense that it has never had, all the journals in the past have existed for a short period of time. And really my goal is to try and see for it to exist for at least 10 years. So that we can have an archive of Ghanaian work through the times and just see what writers, contemporary writers, emerging writers, established writers are writing, how they are writing, what they are writing about, and what they are saying. So that's me. With the work that I do, some of it, like, it is harder because of historical inaccuracies or just lack of archiving. I mean, one of the things I talk about in my work a lot is, you know, there's a lack of documentation of the work that women did. And it's very important that we do not try and repeat it. Even now, I feel like we are somehow slowly or unawarely doing that. Yes, people talk, somebody will write a 256th thread, but we are not committed to longer forms that can easily be found, like when you search, etc. Like that's why the work, for instance, that Akosua is doing with drama queens is so important, the theater work, because for instance, they would take the life of one of the market women and then, you know, just theaterize it. Maybe we'll get just 100 views, but 10 years from now, when somebody needs to have a proper archive of what happened, you can easily access that in that format. So I think definitely that's one of the reasons that it makes it harder. But it's also harder because then you don't have enough information. You definitely don't have support. There are so many barriers against you, but you have to create the content such that you are not recreating the problem that was already there, but you're putting it in a position such that, one, that initial problem is salvaged and you're adding on to it as well. So I think it definitely, that for me, the historical inaccuracies, the lack of documentation, lack of support, I feel like that's a song every artist sings generally. But it's especially harder because these things that we do is delegated to women. At the same time, when we are working on it, I've gotten several comments, and it's not even from just the audience, sometimes it's from other artists. We are always talking about feminism. Yeah, always talking about feminism. And it's not that I'm not willing to engage on questions like that. It's just, I don't know what you want me to say. It's just like somebody saying, or somebody telling One Love that you're always talking about corruption. Yeah, that is my livelihood since I was born. How do you not expect that to be part of the content that's created or the work that I put out as an artist? So I think the challenges are from everywhere, and it definitely makes it harder as an artist. Yeah.
I definitely agree with everything Poetra said. It's also the same in my experience. Starting my activism was even largely through media. On the TV show, I identify as an African feminist, and that means, to say I'm an African feminist, I subscribe to the Charter for African Feminist, the African Feminist Charter, which was drawn by powerful feminists long before me, people like Sarah Mukasa, even Jessica Horn, who I likely got to meet. A range of African feminists who've drawn this down, and we specify what it means to be an African feminist. You're connecting yourself to the history of our feminist ancestors who done this work long before us. Feminist ancestors who were feminists even before the word feminist came in our modern time, because there's a long history of African women's resistance to oppression. And so that's what I'm continuing. But in the time I started doing this work on Ghana TV, talking about these things, I used to have this TV show where we always have end of the week assessment of what's been trending throughout the week. And I would always come with an African feminist lens to issues. And it's always like, always feminism, and why? Always women. I'm a woman, I'm going through these things. Well, I should erase my reality for you. And there were always those threats. There were curses that were thrown at me, like Bible curses, written like a curse from the Bible and thrown at, hey, Charlie. Things like that, like, yo. And because obviously Ghanaian society does not want that type of conversation and mainstream. This is mainstream Ghana. You know, I wasn't in our art spaces. I was in these spaces. Also, the LGBT issues, definitely a taboo. And talking like that on TV, I even sometimes got calls from my parents that they don't agree with anything I'm saying, but don't say this much on TV because they feel they still have to protect you. Because if anything happens, it's them that will come to the police station or they will come for my body. So they are always saying these things, right? It's not their friends I'm making in the circles, it's them. But you know, you still have to. And from time to time, you get my dad or my mom sending me Bible quotes, you know, about you know, how you know these things are sinful and things like that. So it definitely wasn't easy. I feel now looking back, it even may have affected my trajectory in mainstream media because my mates, you know, they have big followings, they have big, you know, bigger shows, they get the bigger gigs, bigger hosting gigs and things. But me with my feminism and LGBT-ness made it very, yeah, she's different. We don't know what to do with her. But yeah, she's okay, you know, like that kind of thing. So I see how that has affected that part of my career. But for outside of that, me, it's been like, oof, all the knowledge I've come to learn being in this field, all the people I've come to meet, all the things I'm continuously learning. I mean, that's a small sacrifice. Yeah, so the question was on challenges doing this work. Yeah, so historical inaccuracies, non-documentation, calling yourself feminist in Ghana already, you know, is something that is a no-no. So those were kind of like the challenges, but you still prod on anyway, you know, because I feel like with those challenges, now people come at you, because you're presenting yourself truly. So people come at you with they are coming truly. Do you know how to say? They're not coming at you with the pretense of who you're pretending to be. When they come and talk to Akosua, they know this is Akosua. I'm not going to, you know, cover anything for you, or so my life has been better that way, you know.
Thank you. So I guess, can you hear me? Yeah. So both of you, your work touches on the question or the theme of freedom. I mean, it's something that the word, you either use it in your work or you have talked about it. So I guess in a very, you know, and the word freedom, I believe, is also linked to unfreedom, where, you know, it's not just about, you know, either emancipation or there's no more colonialism, so we are now free, but there continues to be forms of unfreedom that perhaps speaks to this question of what is freedom.
In this civilization we've created, there are specific societal rules we've created in order to say that we can all move freely and in this way and in safety. However, there are specific constraints we place on people who we place as maybe second-class citizens or not enough. So like women, so like the LGBT plus society. And these are the things we try to fight, right? Because these societal rules are created for all of us to be able to live freely within the society. However, you find that there comes this essentialization of certain rules that become not about freedom, but about oppression, you know, and we find ourselves doing the other thing. So freedom from constraints from society, freedom to be, you know, freedom of just being who you really are, just being, that should be a basic fundamental thing, right? That should be protected and enshrined in our societal and global rules. Freedom to do what you want, freedom to pursue your own destiny and how you think it should be pursued, right? But with all of these things, the caveat is, as long as you are not causing harm, you know, to the other. Yes, you should be free in your religion, right? But just because you're free to be a Christian, does that also give you that freedom to come to my dormitory door during the week when I'm studying, or even on Saturday or Sunday, to come and preach your Bible to me, even though I tell you I'm not Christian? There's this crazy thing that's been happening in the last 2 or 3 weeks. There are these what do you call them, evangelists who found my door and have been coming there now to knock. The first time they knocked, opened, "Hi, how are you? I'm fine. Oh, we are this and we want to come and preach the word. Oh, thank you very much, but I'm not Christian. I have a different belief." Oh, what belief is that? It's personal to me. It's not for you to know. Okay. But so the Bible says, do you have a Bible? I just told you I am not. True, real freedom means you're really also doing the work of understanding and acting out the responsibility that comes with that type of power, right? Therefore, Kanye West trending, right? I bring him up because lately I was having a conversation with a friend. There's a lot of things, let me just say this slowly. I was having a conversation with a friend and this whole White Lives Matter thing came up. And the person actually said, I'm racist because I do not agree with White Lives Matter. And I see how, there's a thing that's happening on social media, a kind of group thing that's being formed, that freedom of speech means we can say all of these things, and it's not hate speech, and there's nothing like hate speech because there's freedom of speech, and we are actually the free thinkers because of cancel culture. For me, what real freedom is we understand that gender is not your binary. Gender is a multiplicity. That feels like free to me. Freedom means that you can be Christian, I can also be traditionalist, I can be Buddhist, right? But your supposed free think says, no, it's two binaries. Your supposed free think says it should be a Christian world and we have to create our constitutions by the Bible in spite of the fact that there are others who are not Christian. And it's actually a global movement. It's also what it's underlining the pushback against, for instance, abortion rights all over the world. This is a common thing. Kanye is not alone. He's picking from a specific pool that's drawing, right? Now, white supremacy has changed in a way that it's even opened doors for, it's no longer being unified by race, but on this whole patriarchal Christian ideology that they feel is dying out because we are being too free with how we want to be, so they want to bring us back to. Therefore, neo-Nazis are becoming a very popular thing to be a part of. So I feel there's a lot of people now misinterpreting what freedom is. And if you're actually really doing the work of freedom, you are actually really also analyzing, then how do I also care about my neighbor? How do I also love my neighbor as myself? That is real freedom. Talk about sexual relationships. A lot of people calling themselves poly now because it's trending. But when you call yourself poly, what are the responsibilities that it comes with, right? Am I also emotionally responsible for this person I'm having this relationship with? What does that emotional responsibility also look like? How do we talk about our relationships in honesty and respect each other's spaces? That's that real work. But we pick just the surface, and for all of that is just cosmetic to me. The real work of freedom is not easy. That's why people just want to be sheep. It's not easy. If you really want to do that work, it means you're really playing with your superpower and you know how to use it. That's the real thing, I think I've gone on, so let me just pause for a bit.
Yeah, all Akosua said is what I want to say. I just wanted to add that I think, we ascribe freedom to no responsibility. That's it. Like, we hear freedom and it's like freedom to do whatever I want, no consequence, that's it. But freedom comes with a responsibility. And that's something I think generally as a people, we don't do here. The minute we hear freedom, that's it. It's supposed to be, I can do whatever I want to do without consequence, without causing harm, etc. But what I also wanted to add to the freedom conversation is, for me as an artist, as a woman, growing up in Ghana, one of the things that I really ascribe to freedom is the freedom to fail. I think in the way that our country is set up, even the people who take the conventional route, if you fail, it can derail you so much. There are no cushions. There is nothing within our system that is supposed to, catch you or guide you or realign you. And so I think that about that a lot in my work. Like I want for there to be space for that freedom to fail, and I honestly I think that that's actually one of the ways in which we have better citizens, because failure comes with a certain responsibility. It comes with a certain emotion that makes you go at things even harder if you get the opportunity. But because it derails you so much, I think it was Debbie who said it earlier, like something about, you know, in the middle class, something can happen to your family and drastically change you so much. You are no longer, the possibility of getting back there is, you know, a dream. And so for me, freedom, the freedom to fail, the freedom to deviate, the freedom to be an anomaly is very important to me in my work. So, yeah.
Poetra, I want you to speak more about the specific kinds of writing, about the arts that you want to see in the journal that you hope to establish. Have you established that already? Okay, so can you speak more about the type of writings that you want to see? And with Akosua, in what ways do you think the Moongirls highlight the issues that are not talked about enough in Ghana? If you can talk more about it.
New forms of conversations are popping up, right? Like podcasts, etc. They're popping up, and I would like I would like to see a merging of that. You know, both like say a journal and somebody decided to, you know what? Let's talk about Shatawale's song "Freedom." Right? I want you to write a 4,000 essay. What do you think the artist is alluding to? Even if the artist isn't alluding to something, what do you think the people are? How do you think the poor class are reacting to it? How do you think the middle class? I want those nuanced conversations to happen in writing, and then I want us to also have a back-to-back conversation where it's not necessarily planned and plotted like writing is. I want us to flesh out the things that we can. There's room for fun. There's room for dissection, there's room for scrutiny. And so I really want, that's the desire for the journal to be that space where we have conversations, where we take our time to look at things well, where we even, you know, use fiction as a way to escape or a way to mock. And so that's the desire, or that's the direction we are trying to get to, yeah.
Thanks. So with Moongirls, the stories we try to tell, I said these are 4 superheroes. These are 4 queer women superheroes. And you don't find that in the superhero canon really with comics and the big, worldwide, right? You don't, and African women, right? So that alone, that's the story. So through their angle, you're seeing them, you're seeing their humanity, you're seeing them as activists, you're seeing them actually also fight the issues that you yourself fight, like corruption, military rule, all of those types of things. And one of the superheroes is called, her superhero name is Sekhmet. Her real name is Fatima. And she's actually based off a character, a person I really did meet, who was a sex worker and a lesbian. However, she does sex work only with men, and her partners are, she does sex work only with men, her partners are women. Right, and that was a story the first time I heard about 6 years ago that was new to me in the scene. So it was something that I thought definitely to include in this. You won't find that anywhere. We with Moongirls, we try to, document these stories through their angles. So for instance, the Lekki Tollgate massacre, for instance, that happened. We saw them actively trying to erase it's happening. Actively, even till now, if you search, it won't be, So we try to also document it in Moongirls. And the great thing about graphic novels is, using words, using image, using colors. So sometimes when you read a comic, sometimes people are not even necessarily reading the words that you're saying, but just the image alone has created a platform for their imagination to think. There's one scene where we've kind of reimagined the Independence Day scene with women also on the final, the podium or whatever, saying that, we also fought for this, we won this. You won't see that in our pictures on the final day on Independence Day. You see women there, right? So if a kid today or is 18 and above, so someone today sees the comics already, that's through imagination and through fiction lets you know this is a possibility. There's so many things that comics can do with just images alone. And so Moongirls is actually trying to facilitate that space. So even if you don't want to follow the story, even just the images, we put a lot into making the images beautiful and intentional. And I just enjoy sometimes just scrolling through. Like it's calming, it's healing. So apart from the stories, Moongirls is a platform to facilitate your imagination to play, to facilitate you to also maybe we've given you a fictionalized version, right, of something. Now maybe after that you want to go and Google the real stories of things, and that's a feedback we get a lot from people, because that's also the work of freedom. If you really want to be free, you would have to access knowledge to be free. Knowledge, especially knowledge of ourselves as Africans and what's been erased. We can't be free if we do not know what's been erased. Currently, what's happening now is they're actually trying to, because of the talk of reparations now, they're actually trying to bastardize our conversation by saying that Africans sold themselves, so therefore, we shouldn't pay reparations. We had the past French ambassador say something on Twitter about, we sold ourselves, so therefore, like, all of these things, I need to understand it's a very connected thing worldwide, right? And human histories can be very short, especially if it's not documented. So we have to do this work, right? I wanted to say something about how freedom underlines our necessity for us to live as human beings, that freedom facilitates diversity. I was reading about how climate change is also the same side of the coin with biodiversity loss, because the water we drink and the food we eat is dependent on is dependent on the ecosystem, and the ecosystem is dependent on that biodiversity, right? And biodiversity is a variety of species, right? So we are basically playing Russian roulette. We are here exterminating, certain trees, certain species, certain whatever, but we don't know whether is that species that is in the end going to bring our demise. We are just doing whatever. And for me, I see the same thing with human beings. There is a diversity of human beings for a purpose. We are all not heterosexual. We are all not women for a reason. We are all not men for a reason. We are all not, the different genders, right? And there's a reason why people in the LGBT plus spectrum are telling you who they are. Because it's been erased. And they're telling you, we're also here, this is also part of diversity, this also deal. You don't know what you're going to erase is what is going to bring your death. It's very, very, very important. So Moongirls is just, we are not academic or anything, but it's this, we want to use the popular culture form of graphic novel to at least facilitate your imagination that way,
So I'm going to allow for questions. But before that, can we just have a round of applause to our two panelists? Thank you. So,
One Love is an editor for Moongirls, I have to say, Charlie. One Love, an editor for Moongirls.
So I already see hands up. We're going to take a few questions and then respond.
Thank you very much, Akosua Hanson and Ama Diaka. I'm very happy to be in this conversation, as I have been in many of the conversations before this. My question is going to be simple. I have often thought about how sometimes a lot of the activist work talk about, say, there is a certain kind of space that a lot of men have controlled, and by that control, been able to oppress women. And then most of the time, the conversation is that putting women in those spaces instead of disrupting the particular system which keeps selecting men into positions like that, or the possibility of anybody to be in that position to exploit. And I want to ask, when you are, thinking about your feminism, what's the kind of, aim that you are trying to reach? Are you trying to, replace the people at the top, or you are trying to remove the top from the system itself? Yeah.
The idea is that there are not many women doing the kind of work that you do, and so that leads you into being responsible for your community, in whatever respect that you find them to be. So really, how do you find the balance of, I guess, engaging with this responsibility that has been placed on you, and then also putting out work that really comes from your natural creativity. That's something that, oh, this is really who Akosua is as a creative, and this is really who Ama is as a poet or as a writer.
So you can answer that in any order. Take your time. Please go ahead.
Trying to remember the first question. It's about feminism. Am I trying to replace or? Yeah. To be honest, I don't think there's a one size fits all. I think every situation can be different. Personally, in my work, and also that's like really one of the things that I feel separates African feminists from the rest of the world, because in our culture, which is a phrase I've begun to hate, women are very communal, right? We aren't individual focused. It's something that we are thinking of in batches. We're thinking of benefiting people. And I think that's really something that culturally and traditionally we are set up to do. So when I see a lot of the women that I have worked with, when even in the distribution of the work or in the distribution of the opportunities, they try to make space for a number of women. And I think that says a lot, or that speaks to a lot, because at the end of the day, women are also individual. Women are capable of harm as much as men are capable of harm. But if we always do it in terms of only representation, oh, a man has been here, so a woman has been here, it defeats the larger purpose of unbalancing the norm. So I believe in creating the opportunity for more women. Come and feel. You two come and feel. Like for me, really, I know it's hard, it's challenging, especially as I work with a lot of women. It can be very challenging, but we won't learn in at least our field or in a category if we haven't had the experience. And so I definitely believe in more opportunities for women, not just, and it can mean sometimes replacing. It can also mean existing side by side to see what works and what can. So for me, I don't think there's a one size fits all. In some situations, you just know, you know what, this is toxic. This is entirely patriarchal. We need to disrupt it. And that's how it has to be done. Sometimes, no. Let's exist side by side and see what we can benefit from it, and then whether then we can replace it or, we can make it better. So that's what I believe. As a feminist, I believe that marriages, and in your explanation, it sounded heterosexual, are partnerships. If today I decide that I'll take one for the team, I'm not in the mood, but I'll take one for the team, that's a conversation. If you aren't willing to have that conversation with me as a feminist, I doubt that we'll be in that position in the first place, because I think it's a conversation. And if we are really committed to pleasure means that I have to be at least willing to participate, because if I'm not willing to participate, I don't even think your enjoyments will be that much. So I think it is like, well, the conversation around feminism in Ghana is such that we've put women in these boxes. They are irrational, they are unreasonable, like they can't have conversations. But the reality of this is that we are always having conversations. We're always negotiating, renegotiating. And to be very honest, I feel like it's questions like these that promote it, because we've boxed women into, or we've boxed feminism into, they are irrational women. But it's not really. It is an ongoing conversation. I want to be seen. I want to be considered. I want to be heard. And that really is it. So I think to answer your question is, I can't have a yes or no, like, okay, so I'm aware of the consequences. Is this a military rule? It's not. It's a marriage. It's a partnership.
All right. With your question, it's something that we actually even discussed a lot in gender class, right? But let me say this. So as an African feminist, when I say I identify as that, I identify by the charter. What we say is we are centering the analysis of our society as a patriarchal society. And our analysis of that, meaning when we say patriarchy, is that there's a system of male authority that legitimizes women's oppression politically, socially, culturally, all of that. And to identify as an African feminist is to be political in saying we are analyzing this system and we are aiming to end, we are ending this system. And in that work too, we're also doing the work of crafting new identities. And patriarchy hits not just men. The sun shines on all of us. Patriarchy hits women and men. And an example, if you look in our history, the history of the gender ministry in Ghana, my lecturers back then, Prof. Domako Ampofo, in their time, they were the feminists, like the way we are the ones, the young feminists, and they were the young popular feminists then. And they were then always, the gender ministry was always against them because the gender ministry, for some reason since its inception, never worked well with the feminists. They were always at par with the feminists, always. And so they were always fighting the gender ministry at the time. That was also the time when they were trying to, the gender ministry was trying to, pass this, when they were pushing for marital rape to be recognized as marital rape, that you cannot, so that links into that, that you cannot, because she's your wife, there's nothing like marital rape when you rape her, right? It was they who were fighting the Ministry of Gender at the time. If you come and look down the trajectory, we have Otiko Jaba who was blaming rape on high school girls' skirts in school. We look at the gender ministry today and the fiasco it is, right? So there's an example, even if you look at our first ladies' positions, and do they really help the cause, the feminist cause? Us as feminists, we say no. So you can also have a woman in that position also using patriarchal power, facts, right? So for us, it's to topple the system. And someone say, okay, does that mean we do this first or we do that first? There's nothing like first. Time is this way. If you are doing this at the same time. Someone is doing the work of toppling the system. Someone is doing the work of making sure we have enough women in our parliaments. All of the same things should be happening, period, And to answer your question, I think with me, it's a different thing. I've always been, my parents said when I was like 7, 8, I used to say I wanted to be Kwame Nkrumah, and I was pissed that Kwame Nkrumah came and did it first, right? So that's always been my, I've always been the leader. I didn't even push myself in school. I was the class prefect. I was made the head girl. I was also the one who ran Remnant Waves. Remnant Waves was kind of like what I did with Drama Queens, and I now realize it's what started Drama Queens, right? Remnant Waves was basically a high school club where we went to society and did the things that Drama Queens are doing now. So it was my formation. So what I'm doing now, I feel like that's the mastery I'm trying to get to. Mastering life in such a way that I'm able to blend my art with the life and responsibilities that will be forced on me in spite of. So for instance, I still have to work so that I get a salary. My art doesn't give me that, right? But then I'm trying to still find a way constantly that my job still has art, that the things I do still mean things in this way. Even if I'll give myself sleepless nights after the work day, going back to try and write Moongirls afterwards, sometimes I get withdrawal symptoms after 2-3 months when I've not done any artistic work, and so I listen to it. I'm doing the job and I'm still doing the artistic work, and I'm not going to try to denigrate either, because I realize that my art feeds from the life I'm living. I have to catch life. And how to catch life is I have to feel the difficulties. It's like Akufo-Addo who doesn't feel anything we feel now. I really have to go to the process of now, Charlie, everything is really expensive. See the salary I'm earning. If I'm not getting that feed, my art will die in that way. So I'm just seeing it as all a part of it, trying to do it all at the same time. All of it feeds into the other, so that I don't lose my time in this life. I don't want to be like, yeah, I wasted my years. Nah. For me, that's the worst thing. My dad did this thing when we finished BEC. BEC, you go home for 6 months. He literally made us only stay at home for 6 months. Don't go anywhere. He didn't want us to party. So 6 months, we're just locked in the house. It was there from then that I swore I will never waste time like that ever again. It's been a fear. So everything, I'm always moving. Everything, even if I don't want to do this job, I see it as maybe this is a scene for Moongirls, or maybe this is a character for Moongirls. Charlie, my boss, the character he has in my next chapter. So that's a nice thing, Thanks.
Ooh. So join me again in thanking our panelists for this fantastic end to our workshop or conference. And give a round of applause to all of you who have stayed till the end. Thank you.